You're listening to an excerpt from A Mexican Crossing Lines. Where's Gibson? On KPPP LP 88.1 Fargo Moorhead, adding local color to your airwaves.
Because remember, there was all these celebrities at Standing Rock, Francis Fisher, Jane Fonda, there was musicians, there was concerts, there was museum, there was speaking engagements, there were protests, there were other camps, there were other things that were going on in Europe, and it just so happens that one of the many celebrities that went to Standing Rock, Ezra Miller, the actor that portrays the Flash and that will be having a movie coming out very soon in the installment of the Flash series, he was accused of grooming the oldest child of Sarah Jumping Eagle and Chase Iron Eyes and making her gay and making her trans. I guess the allegation intuits. I mean, they don't come out and say that. Let's just hear from Sarah herself. What did she say? Here are some of the posts that she put out about Ezra Miller being a predator. She wrote, the information, and this is from June of 2022.
Okay, not that long ago.
No. The information I am sharing should make you feel uncomfortable. You can't look away. You can't ignore it. I hope you never feel comfortable with a vulnerable person being abused and drugged by a psychopath. A picture is worth 1,000 words. You aren't in my situation, and I hope that you never are. I will do whatever it takes to help get my child to safety. If you don't want to share the photo, then don't. Share the psychopath Ezra Miller is a predator photos and put pressure on Warner Brothers. I think it is. Ezra Miller, Warner Brothers Discovery. Ezra Miller is a predator, she posted on August of 2022. They are delusional, entitled, abusive, and a psychopath. The victims' criminal behavior and charges will keep coming forward. Warner Brothers Discovery needs to get a clue. I am surprised that Chase and Sarah didn't need to get a lawyer because that is defamation. And from what I have learned online in the resolution of what happened to their oldest child, who is transgender and goes now by the name of Gibson, they were flat out lying about Ezra Miller. And the reason behind it is pretty disgusting.
Wow.
Yeah, it's going to get ugly. So, on this, the second day of Trans Visibility week or month, I want for you to see what they did to their own trans child.
Wow.
After she was an adult, because they did not want her to transition and they wanted to force her to stop being gay and trans. Somebody by the name of Ghosto Meg, tweeted about this in response to someone that believed the assertions by Chase and his wife regarding Ezra Miller. Wait for what? The court case involving Gibson Iron Eyes took place in July. Their parents failed to force them into a permanent conservatorship. They were trying to take away their rights to autonomy, Duke.
Wow.
A conservatorship is like a guardianship where you don't have the right to make your own medical decisions or your own decisions about anything. Financial decisions, educational decisions, nothing. This is what they did to Britney Spears, right?
Yep, exactly.
They were trying to do the same thing to their own child, who is an adult, by saying that they were vulnerable, that they were mentally ill, that they were drugged, that they were groomed, and that they were abused by a Hollywood actor. When in fact, that Hollywood actor, who is themselves a non-binary individual that was trying to help this child escape the abusive, transphobic, and homophobic family and movement, frankly, that these people were part of. I want to show you that the people that went on to join the caravans and help smuggle people into the United States to seek asylum are the same people that are vaccination, anti-mask, that are homophobic, and that are transphobic. These are the same people that supported the Jussie Smollett hoax. The same people.
Wow.
Let me show you the different screenshots that are in that tweet.
Okay.
Here is the court paper, the court docket that shows that's Gibson's dead name, but you can see Gibson had a case based upon the petition filed by Chase Iron Eyes for guardianship of the respondent, which is Gibson. That was scheduled for June 27th of 2022 in the tribal court building. And they took out some of their identifying information there. Yeah. But there you see the court case went to court, scheduled for court, and based upon the guardianship request of the parent, Chase Iron Eyes. The second, you can go to the second one here. The second one, the second image, is from Gibson's Instagram account. And in this excerpt, it says, Gibson said, "I am in no way or under any circumstance have ever been, during my short-lived adulthood, in need of a conservatorship.
Okay.
My father and his allegations hold no weight and are frankly transphobic and based in the notion that I am somehow incapable of coherent thought or opposing opinions to those of my own kindred, worrying about my well-being. I am now aware of the severity of emotional and psychological manipulation that I was made to endure while in my parents' home." Severe.
Yeah.
Emotional and psychological manipulation. Transphobic. Homophobic. Now let's go to the next one. This is another post from the Instagram of Gibson. "I am an adult and I deserve to feel authority in my own body. I am tired of wondering whether or not cops will show up to section me on a daily basis. I have decided upon a therapist, and I am excited to now engage in conversation with a mental health professional about my anxiety and probable depression. It is no one's business. My choices are my own, and as to the nature of police intervention in my case, it is unnecessary, and it is a waste of time and resources." As you saw, the mom, Juanita,
Yeah.
Sarah Juanita Jumping Eagle, said, charges are coming, charges are forthcoming, you're going to see all of this happening. And instead, their case was completely dismissed.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And here's the history. It says in June, two restraining orders, really protective orders, were issued against Ezra Miller. The first was filed in tribal court in North Dakota by Chase Iron Eyes, a Native American businessman. Notice they don't refer to him as an attorney.
Yep.
Because why wouldn't an attorney be able to represent himself?
Yep. Plus it credentialize you too.
Right. And his wife, Sarah Jumping Eagle, on behalf of their adult 18-year-old
Yeah.
Gibson Iron Eyes. They use the dead name there, but they did do reference that that goes by Gibson. They accused Miller of grooming, brainwashing, and emotionally abusing their child, a non-binary indigenous activist. Miller met when Gibson was only 12. The tribal court put a temporary order in place, but ultimately dismissed the request for a permanent one.
Okay.
So the restraining order or the protection order that was originally filed that would require Ezra Miller to stay away from Gibson was granted. And as I've told you about restraining orders or protection orders, the first one, which is usually temporary, is most of the time granted. But then a court date is set for you to come and provide evidence and proof of the fact that there is a real threat that needs to be ongoing and protected. And they did not meet the standard. So it was dismissed. It says that the parents say that they withdrew their request for custody because the odds were stacked against them.
Yeah.
But in this post from Gibson, talking about the abuse that they endured at the hands of their father, you can see that there are other factors at play. This is another post by Gibson. There are countless missing and murdered indigenous people. I am not one of them.
Wow.
Hashtag missing and murdered indigenous women, girls to T2S. That is real, and it's on an ongoing crisis, and therefore I wish to recognize the severity of misinformation about my life and experience. As an indigenous feminist, political advocate for Native youth, and queer person, I have come to understand the fact that specifically it is those perspectives and narratives that are buried. An intentional degradation of our movement occurred on my behalf. They used the indigenous people's movement and the movement to protect missing and murdered indigenous women for this child that is non-binary, transgender, queer, and does not want for them to be searching under that missing, murdered, indigenous women tag. The people holding positions of power and influence in our organizational spaces need to be checked and held accountable. Colonial institutions do not work for Native nations. The upkeep of patriarchal egotism in Indian country must be addressed.
Wow.
I agree with Gibson. The call for accountability is coming from within.
Yep.
Here's another post. This one is an excerpt from Rolling Stone magazine where Gibson was interviewed, in which they said in an email that Gibson denied allegations that they were being controlled by Ezra Miller, the Flash actor. Quote, "The notion that I have been brainwashed or that I have been coerced in any context is grotesquely false. Gibson wrote. My independence from my family is in this way is new and complex. Their reaction to my actions is not my responsibility, and I've tried to have civil virtual interactions with both of them and failed." This person, Gibson, was stalked by their parents all over the country. And the parents even posted that Gibson or Ezra or somebody with the group physically assaulted the mom. Posted pictures of bruised arms and talked about the fact that they were being abused. Ongoing abuse of their child was happening. And it turns out from this article that we can see, Gibson is saying the opposite is true. They tried to work things out with their parents. The parents would not, they wouldn't cooperate. The quote goes on, quote, "For media outlets and the public to believe and sensationalize my parents' claims is a gruesome violation of my dignity and Ezra's," Gibson wrote, before thanking those who are making efforts to support and not undermine their autonomy. Lawyers for Ezra Miller didn't reply to requests for comment. So, what else did the parents do besides be homophobic and transphobic and stalk them and post sensationalized, grotesque, as Gibson calls them, mischaracterizations, and use the organizations within the movement to seek out missing and murdered Indigenous women to try to force Gibson into a conservatorship? Well, apparently, according to this message sent from, I believe that's Chase Iron Eyes.
Okay.
It's one of the parents
Yep.
to Gibson, telling them they need to continue with their ceremonies. And it says, I am sorry to say that you, this is referring to Gibson, you have Lakota blood, and it is going to compel certain inspirations that only other Lakota can really help you with. It's okay to consider the depths of other worldviews, but there are blood obligations that cannot be avoided except to your detriment and spiritual degradation. You'll see that we are here to help you. Wow. Do not play with medicine.
Wow.
And then you see that this is posted on Gibson's Instagram, and you can see their comment below. At the bottom here it says, from Gibson, "This is the way my parents have threatened me. In attempts to manipulate my movements and assert their narrative to the public, using ceremony and native religious teachings to guilt me into returning to their dysfunctional household. This is not what our medicine is for. Ezra is innocent."
Wow.
Statement from Gibson.
Mm-hmm.
And Gibson was exposed to sweat ceremonies that were abusive. This was, people following the Instagram and the social media of Gibson talked about the fact that Gibson reported being abused in more than one way. It's Giving Silvo tweeted on October 23rd of 22, "Gibson has told us over and over that their parents are the abusers, and that Ezra, a platonic queer friend, non-binary, they go by they, them pronouns now, helped them to escape. The Iron Eyes wanted conversion therapy, and they put Gibson through a full month of sweat ceremonies, even cutting off Gibson's hair and burning it."
Wow. Jeez.
That is what these people subjected their own child to. And by the way, remember, they went back to 2016 when Standing Rock happened, when Gibson was only 12 years old, to say that Ezra Miller had been grooming their child for years. But the person, one of the people that had made accusations against Ezra Miller, an ex groupie of Ezra Miller's, broke their silence to post about Chase Iron Eyes, knowing full well, that Chase knew Ezra Miller was not a groomer, but used the accusations that this ex-fan had made to their own benefit because it was expedient.
Yeah.
They posted, "Chase knew my groomer claims were untrue when I talked about Ezra Miller in 2020. If he felt they were, he would not have continued his friendship with Ezra Miller until up to 2022.
Oh, yeah.
So Chase Iron Eyes continued to remain friends and avail himself of opportunities to travel, and so did Gibson, to the set of different movies in different countries, and hang out with the Hollywood folks. Chase Iron Eyes did too. And it goes on, it says, he is out of options on how to get Gibson back. So he is using that lie as a tactic.
Wow.
It will not work.
Hmm.
And no, it did not work.
Yeah.
It did not work. What they did was to alienate their own child,
Mm-hmm.
their oldest child. And that is a great loss, because this is a child that they had trained in activism,
Mm-hmm.
in leadership. This is the child they had deliver letters to Hillary Clinton
Yeah.
in Washington, D.C. This is a child that they had in the leadership of the children that were in the Indigenous Youth Council that was supported and promoted by Chase Iron-Eyes and Francis Fisher.
Yeah.
And of course, Francis Fisher always promoted Chase Iron-Eyes
Yeah.
and Dennis Banks. Here's one of her posts from 2017 promoting the Last Real Indians publication that Eddie Blackcloud was prominently featured in,
Oh, that's right.
along with Dennis Banks and Ames, who's Ames' co-founder, live from Oceti.
Okay.
But I also want to show you that Francis Fisher traveled around with Dennis Banks. Dennis Banks' assistant, JoJo, and the lawyer that contacted me, Ann Redford Hall, weren't just in Washington, D.C., conveniently, when that Nathan Phillips hoax happened.
Mm-hmm.
They were always around the people in spiritual leadership like Dennis Banks. And here is a video from her Facebook page where they're at Capitol Records with Dennis Banks to record a song
Really?
called Minnie Wachoni, which they were going to use to raise money for the defense fund for the Water Protector Legal Collective.
Oh, my God.
Here you go.
We're at Capitol Records recording with a whole slew of amazing recording artists and Robbie Romero. That's Don Was, the famous Don Was. Dennis Banks is upstairs.
Yeah, Dennis Banks is upstairs. And Robert Romero and
Yeah.
Bob Was, the famous Bob Was,
Wow.
whom I've never heard of. I don't know why he's famous. But the same guy that you saw in that video with the weird hat is the same guy at Standing Rock with Dennis Banks and
That's
Chase
right.
Iron-Eyes
That's
in
right.
that photo.
Yeah.
And here's a video from her page when Dennis Banks joins the group of recording artists at Capitol Records and her to record the song Minnie Wachoni. Here's that video clip where you can see Dennis Banks. I think that's the Waz guy, Bob Waz. It's not up there.
This is awesome. It's a great vocal.
Really?
Absolutely. I love it, man.
It sounded horrible to me.
Yes. Those are the people that were, hanging out with these people in the leadership, like Chase Iron-Eyes and Dennis Banks and all of these folks that were promoted by the Hollywood crowd and the PR crowd that went to Standing Rock. They have very questionable backgrounds.
Mm-hmm. You're listening to an excerpt from A Mexican Crossing Lines. Where's Gibson? on KPPP LP 88.1 Fargo Moorhead.